Adam, appreciate you joining us. You pretty much joined in right when we're about to end the
Yeah,
meeting.
they're tearing me apart, Adam, about about our research about the posterity. Sitting there saying we don't know what the hell we're talking about, and we were grasping at straws.
Oh,
Yeah.
listen, that's a good thing because that makes it's another side that we might not see that you bring forward.
I have brought forward a lot. So I spent 2 days building that document, by the way.
Yeah.
The idea that we were grasping at straws is kind of absurd.
I think it's clear. I mean, you listen to anybody. I mean, again, people can make their own mind up on that, but when I hear it and other people I know hear it, it's like clearly this guy was skimming over the initial definition of the word, and then he was jumping to these theoretical
You
abstracts
interrupt,
at the
Mike,
end.
like you just did Adam there. You interrupt, and then you tangent on for minutes.
So I'm gonna go out on a limb. So the entire premises of your argument is based on the interpretation of one word, posterity. That is the crux of the entire argument you guys are making. So
No,
the document that I produced was arguing about what the word posterity actually means and what the founders intended by that, right? So because that's the center of everything you guys are talking about. And there's no way that posterity means another level of noble type. And I say type because you're creating another classification of individuals who believe that they have some divine right to rule. That was what
I don't know where you're getting that, Adam, because MJ made it clear even last week when we were having our conversation, or the week before, that wasn't the case at all. So
it is absolutely the case. You're creating a class of ruling people. You're creating nobility. Again, you're renaming it, you're calling it posterity, but it's the exact same concept.
I'll tell you what, since you're on with Grant now, I think it's the first time we've had you on with Grant. Grant, give Adam, some words here. Adam has this idea that we're creating this superior class, saying that we're, and in fact, to paraphrase his words from last week, we're just putting ourselves up there as the aristocracy, like King George. And hold on, Josh, and trying to create another noble class. That's his concern. Go ahead, Grant.
Well, we're not trying to create another class. We're just saying that this is who we are in relation to the Constitution and this nation. And we're not trying, I'm not trying to rule over anyone, because if you're a U.S. citizen, then I'm not your ruler, and I don't want to be your ruler. I'm not your sovereign. I have no intentions of trying to tell you what to do, how to live your life, or anything else. But we, the people, have the right to rule ourselves in our sovereign capacity in legal relations to the nation state that we created.
And I want to add to that, the only point we've been making is that it is only the posterity, because they are the creators of that federal government, have the lawful authority to do something about that corrupt government.
The word posterity appears 9 times in the Bible, by the way, with the first reference in Genesis 45:7, referencing the posterity of Adam going back to Jesus Christ. The word's used multiple times throughout the Bible. So it's pretty concrete, what the definition of posterity is. You could look at it in the Bible, and get a literal sense of what it means. You can look at it in Bouvier's Law Dictionary, which is what SCOTUS uses when they're looking up legal definitions of what posterity is. There's no debate on what the word posterity is. Now, people can, take the word and do whatever the hell they want with it. But in a legal context, posterity.
Clearly, there is a debate on what the word posterity is, because who is the posterity of Adam but all of humanity?
No, wrong.
Well, it's another topic.
Wrong?
Yeah, yes, you are wrong.
The Creator created all of human life, and the posterity of Adam is all of human life. And
that's not true.
Okay.
That's another discussion or debate. So why don't we set that one on the table?
That's not another discussion. That's what he just brought up. That's literally what he just brought up, was that God. Oh my God.
Right, but it's talking about the posterity of Adam going through the direct line of Jesus Christ, not every human being on the planet. It's specifically
referencing. Then the only people that deserve to rule are Jews, if that's where you're going.
No, yeah,
That's
actually,
literally true. Don't give me
Actually,
shit. That's
you're right in a
bullshit.
sense.
hold on, Adam. You're right in a
Actually,
sense. Let's clarify it
These
for
are,
you.
these are God's words, not mine. Actually, you're right in a sense. If you're talking about the real Jews, meaning the 12 tribes of Israel,
Correct. The descendants of Adam all the way up to Joseph and then some.
That's right. They were put in the garden to rule and to give God's commands unto all of creation. That was their duty.
Yeah.
But
So
by
we all surrender to Israel. This nation needs to now surrender
now
its sovereignty to Israel.
But this is where you can be mistaken too, because the nation state of Israel over there that they have gotten the vast majority of Christians to believe is God's people, they have nothing to do with the biblical Israel.
So now you're
They are
using
nation-
selective interpretation, Mike.
No, I'm not. I'm using
It's
historical data.
convenient
I'm
for
using
you.
archaeological data. I'm using genealogical data. I'm using biblical data. And Grant can elaborate on it if he wants to. MJ can elaborate on it if she wants to. As all I'm telling you, Adam, is obviously we live in a world where there's all kinds of religious and spiritual mumbo jumbo going on, and most people don't have a clue of what the truth is. But the
I
simple fact
absolutely
of the matter
agree with that. That 100%. And what I think you
Yeah.
guys are using is the exact same thing. You're using. So you are selectively right now, selectively using religious interpretation of the word posterity, but not as it relates to Jews, because now you want to disqualify the Jews based on that. Right?
No,
So
I'm
no,
not
that
disqualifying.
you
I'm not
must submit
disqualifying.
by your own definition. If you're going to use some
No,
religious definition, you
no,
must
you're
now
wrong.
submit yourself to those who
No,
declare themselves the posterity of Jesus Christ, aka the Jews by which he was born. You don't have any authority to presume the ability to rule anything unless the Jews give it to you, if that's the definition you're going to use by your own logic.
and again,
You're trying to selectively use logic to benefit yourself.
no.
I believe that. I'll only say something because
I think
what I
part of the
understand.
reason you're going off here, Adam, is because of all the misinformation you have in your own mind about what a Jew is, who the Jews are, what Israel
I
is.
know what the Jews are. I don't believe in the nation of Israel as it is. I know all of this, Mike. But
What do you know, Adam?
You're arguing their points, but then you're arguing against
I'm
their
not
points
arguing
only
their
when
points.
it's
That's ridiculous
selectively
for you to say
chosen.
that. So,
Well,
Adam,
let's leave the Jews out of it for a minute. Let's talk
hold
about
on,
prosperity.
Hold on. I don't want too many people talking because this is significant. Hold on, this is significant.
I'm
It's
trying to say,
important.
we're not trying to
So,
rule somebody. The thing is, this is like a family
wait,
will.
Tave, hold on. Wait, I'm going to mute you, Tave. Tave, I'm just going to mute you for a second, please, because I know you're anxious to go and you can speak next. But I do want Adam to express all this because it's important, because I'm listening to him. I hear his concerns, but I hear the flaws in what he's saying. Because number one, he's already suggested that everybody on planet Earth came from Adam, and that's just not true.
Then where did the other people come from?
I also hear
Where did Cain's wife come from in the land of Nod? Can you explain that one to me?
there's a lot of information that's been withheld from people, Adam, and a lot of misinformation has been put out in its stead. Okay, but there are multiple sources of information that people can glean from and get bits of the pieces of the puzzle to start putting it together. And that's why the Bible, which we can get truth from it, even says those who love the truth and seek it will find it, but they will find it in multiple places.
But if it can't be your own select truth, Mike.
No, it's not about your own lectures. It's about getting bits of information from multiple places and see if they all concur, if they all line up together. Okay.
And that's the Baptist method of rightly dividing the Bible, which they use to take select verses from here, there, and everywhere that aren't related and create unrelated doctrines that have nothing to do with anything, Mike. It's the same.
Right, because that's just a talking point for them to rightly divide the Bible. First of all, they're taking a book that has been distorted, that has been put forth by the powers in this world as being the perfect infallible word of God, and only it and it alone is it, and don't take from it and don't add to it. We know that book was put forth by
Can we stick to the Constitution? Can we stick there?
And we are getting off track here. Okay, the bottom line is, if you can believe that that Negroes and Asians and Indians and all the different peoples of the world all came from Adam. If you want to believe that, you're free to believe it. And if you do, yes, that's going to cause a rift in any further discussion of any other topic, because you're already in a different philosophical zone or a different spiritual zone.
But that was Adam's point, Mike. So you're saying America is only for this noble elite class of posterity that you say posterity means.
Okay, now I'm gonna muted you because you just made a good point, Joe. So I muted you because you made your point. And no, that's not it at all. What we're saying is that a certain people founded this nation, and they founded it, in their own words, according to their own declaration, for themselves and their posterity. As my son pointed out, the word posterity has clear and obvious meanings. And to your point, Adam, to me, it is laughable. It was grasping at straws, the effort that was put forth by Joe last week and trying to change the word posterity to mean something else. The word posterity is clear what posterity is on multiple sources. My son just simply mentioned that it's in the Bible as well, because it's talking about a lineage of people. So to your point, Adam, on that you would say, oh, then you're saying only the Jews. Well, right there, you're going off base again, because you're referencing this nation state of Israel, which is a legitimate concern, one that Tave brings up a lot, because there's a lot of people out there that don't like the idea of this nation state of Israel all of a sudden rising up and taking control and implementing all
Adam
these
never
laws
referenced it. Your son did.
The reason I reference that is because your son
Christians.
referenced it, and the reason I say that is because what you're talking about is, if what you're saying is true, then the idea of personal property no longer exists. You're saying that the only people who can actually own property are the people that you're declaring. You, Mike, not the founders. You, Mike, are deciding who and what the posterity is based on your interpretation.
No,
and
not
they
on my
own the
interpretation at
United
all.
States, and they get to decide who rules the land. That's not a thing, sir. That's the entire Declaration of Independence. All men are created equal, that all men have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that all men have the unalienable right to their own property, sir. So
And
you're
again, you're
telling
taking that
me
out
that
of
the
conversation.
owners, you've told me multiple times that they are the owners, and their prosperity and their prosperity only has the right to rule. Therefore, that nobody in this land can actually own property. We have now denied the individual right to own property, and the only right to own property in this land is those that you have defined as posterity. That is not what the founders meant. That is not what any of the founders wrote. Thomas
Okay, hold
Paine,
on. All right, I'm going
Locke.
to mute you. Adam, I just muted you because you're going on and on and on and on after making several points that need to be addressed. I was listening to you, and you were going on a rant and a ramble, and you're wrong on everything you said. And I'm going to let Grant go ahead and make a few comments. Go ahead, Grant. You see Adam's concerns. Go ahead, Grant.
Well, in the current state of affairs, nobody owns their land in the United States now. All the people that are U.S. citizens, you don't even own yourself. So I will agree with him on that matter. Nobody owns the land. But I have a different opinion about who really owns it. I'm not going to say anything else, but I have my reasons in law, Supreme Court cases, to think otherwise. That there are some people who are the owners. Somebody has to own the land, because all the land on this planet has been claimed by somebody. So you can go over to China and say you own the land and see what happens to you.
Yep. And then I would just add to that. Hold on. I was going to add to that. I'm going to add to that. Okay. That two things. Number one, to what Adam, all that you were spewing out there. My first thought is, Adam, go buy yourself 10,000 acres of property, put a fence around it, and then come up with a contract that says you're preserving that for yourself and your posterity. And tell me if you're not going to be
That's not
up
what
in
the
arms.
founders did, Mike.
Excuse me, Joe. I'm making a valid point. Let me finish it before you interrupt. Go get your 10,000
By
acres.
your own estimation, you're making it a valid point. But see, you're interpreting and you're auditing this discussion based on your interpretations only.
No,
So
not
here's the thing about
interpretations.
yes, it is interpretations.
It's not
Mike.
interpretation.
You have no material evidence to support any of this. So you're talking about who the owner. So Grant just said, who's the owner of the land? We're not the owner. I absolutely 1000% agree with what he just said about who's the owner of land. No, we don't own our land. We are not sovereigns. And it has nothing to do with anything other than the corporate usurpation of what is government and what isn't. I understand that implicitly. I've been dealing with that for 20 years.
You
Okay?
don't understand it.
Don't tell me what I don't and
I'm telling you,
understand.
you do not. Because I'm telling you right now, if we use the example of an allodial title, guess who the only people are that can access that allodial title? Just take a wild guess.
States don't
The
recognize
lands have been
titles.
transferred and sold and divided, even based on the original allodial title. So you're going back to, if you're going back to allodial title, you're going back to the crown, Mike.
That's right. Sovereignty.
That's right. So
the allodial title.
No
that's the
right
point. Hold on. I'm going to mute you again, Adam, because let's take it point by point. Allodial title is passed from sovereign to sovereign. Guess what? There's such a thing as a sovereign. As long as you're in this world of governments made by man,
the founders fought against, Mike. That's what the whole purpose of the revolution.
Go ahead, Grant.
Well, I'm going to have to run, but I'm just going to say, he was talking about in his statement about we didn't own the land because we're not the sovereigns.
And if you're going to keep muting me, Mike, I'm done.
Well, fine. I mean, you can't keep rambling and rambling. If you make a point,
you're rambling and rambling. You're not listening. You're cutting me off when you don't like it.
No, you're rambling and rambling, and I'm cutting you off so that your point, you've already made several, can be addressed. And see, he couldn't handle the heat, so he left the kitchen, which is fine.
And if this goes
so
back,
what we'll do right now is just address the point that was made. Clearly, the first thing that Adam tried to do when he come on here was disintegrate the obvious common sense and lawful definition of the word posterity. That was his fight.
By your own definition.
And again, Joe, I'll meet you for now, because again, you keep saying by my own definition. Adam kept saying by my own interpretation. No, not my definition. Let my son's going to read it now for the record.
I'll read you the definition.
12th edition black law.
Hold on, Tave. My son's going to read the definition.
Descendants, all the descendants of a person in a direct line. It's that period. That's simple. That's what posterity is. Descendants of a person in a direct line.
Right. That's the lawful definition. And even Joe.
And even if you don't agree with it, well, that's what the Supreme Court says it is. So.
Right. If you don't agree with it, you know,
you may not have to agree with
grab,
it.
Grab your muskets. If you don't agree with it, grab your muskets. And I'm saying this figuratively, but grab your muskets and walk up to Washington, D.C., up against the Supreme Court, because they're the ones that go by that. Okay, we're talking about law, not interpretations, not my opinion. We're talking about law. And again, I will reiterate, it's very clear to me and to some others that if you listen to the conversation last week, Joe, where you were trying to put a different twist on that interpretation, you were grasping at straws, and you clearly just slurfed right over the first definition, which also said the same thing. It's a lineage of posterity. So the point is, if we're talking about posterity, and Adam, the main point he was trying to make when he came on here right now was asserting that that's the crux of our argument, that we're basing it off one word. Therefore, logically, that's his basis for trying to attack the word, is because it's such a strong foundation for our basis. So therefore, let's attack the word. And, you know, you're free to do that. Go ahead, Tave. I know you've been wanting to say something. Go ahead, Tave.
Posterity, out of Black's Law, 12th edition. Future generations collectively. Number 2, all the descendants of a person to the furthest generation.
Now I'm muted you, Joe, but it's funny again how Joe had to do his cackle again. Read it again, Tave. I'm going to demonstrate what Joe just did. Read it again, Tave.
Future
The founding
generations.
Don't unmute,
generations
Joe.
he
I'll
just said.
unmute you because this is very significant, what you just did, and I'm going to demonstrate it. Read it again, Tave.
Posterity, number one. Future generations collectively. Number
Wow. Right there.
Yeah,
You did do his cackle.
collectively.
Now, hold on.
Let him finish.
Let me finish, Joe. All right.
Number
So
two,
isn't it
all the
interesting? He heard the
descendants-
word collectively and thought that meant like an out, like, oh, everybody in America are a collective. I got news for you. My family is a collective, and we go back 400 years in this land. So
descendants
don't
of
think
the
because you hear the word collective, wow, I got you on the word
Well, why
collective.
would
It
they
doesn't
use
work
it?
that
Why
way.
is it used then?
Because collective, they're talking about the
Well, let him
collective
finish
of the
the thought.
posterity.
Let him finish
Now
the
go
thought.
ahead,
No,
Joe.
That's not what
family.
they meant. No, that's not what the founders meant.
All
No,
right,
it's not.
let Tave finish. Go ahead, Tave.
He didn't finish the
He didn't
definition.
even finish. Go ahead, Tave.
That's like a family will, basically. When you have posterity, that's all that basically is a will.
Please finish the sentence, Tave. Finish
And actually, let me finish the point. Tave also said generations, and generations is, again, here are the generations of Noah. Here are the generations of Adam. Generations is posterity. It's the same thing. Generations is a family. It's a blood. That's what generations is.
All the descendants of a person to the furthest generations. So that means as far back as your family lineage goes, your blood, you're entitled to a will that would have been drawn up by contract through the crown. And these people that wrote these documents that we're talking about specifically entered into a contract and agreement that these 13 colonies that they settled upon were for their posterity. And that is that.
Thank you, Tave. Now
really
there's
will.
Tave sitting on the sidelines, and he just gave us his take. All right. And so I think it's interesting that Joe and Adam are the only two that are trying to change the definition of the word posterity because they don't fully understand or comprehend what we're even discussing here about posterity.
So why did we need a constitution then, Mike? Why did we need a Bill of Rights if the founders only were intending their future posterity to their personal generations?
Because you can't run a business without a charter, and that's the charter for the business called the United States. You know, you can't run it.
Not only that, but Grant wants to say something on that. Answer
It was
that
a government.
Hold on, answer Joe's question, Grant. Why? Why a constitution, Grant? I know the answer. I'm going to let Grant answer it.
Why a constitution for the posterity? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the preamble, the Supreme Court's ruled that the preamble is not the law, but it can be referred to where the lawmaker's intent is ambiguous or unclear.
Thank you.
So, and you got to view the Constitution through the lens of the common law. And the common law, the heir is clearly defined, the bloodline heir. And they could be multiple bloodline heirs, which would be the term coparcenaries. You know, there's a group of people that have privity of blood from their ancestors, and they may be coparcenaries to the estate of their forefathers.
I appreciate you bringing that up, Grant. What's the other word? There's coparcenaries, and the other is
privity of blood.
Right, but what's the opposite of that again?
Cognomen.
Cognomen, right?
And isn't all this acquired by defeat?
An agnomen arises from event, but a cognomen is the posterity.
Right. Let's elaborate on that just briefly. Hold on, Joe, because this is a very significant point. Make it clear those two words. Say those words and explain them one more time, Grant.
I don't have you can go look it up in a law dictionary, but there's the cognomen and there's the agnomen.
Right. So here's just words for you to look up, Joe and Adam, if Adam ever hears this. Or you could tell Adam, Joe, look up the word cognomen and agnomen.
The founders saw judicial. My God, you're just twisting words around, man, and taking words out of Black's Law Dictionary and applying it.
Joe just can't stand it, man.
Isn't this all because we defeated these people in war and we made a deal with them? These guys made a deal and they entered into this, and this was spoils of war, basically.
Dave, when people make a deal, there's two sides. The Crown did not interpret the Constitution or write the Constitution. They had no part in writing the Constitution.
They gave us this land.
What?
The king agreed to the charters.
When the founders wrote the Declaration of Independence, the king took no part in it whatsoever, and he had no say-so in it.
Well, I'll tell you, who do you think you're going to fight this when it goes if it was to go to court? You think you're going to go to the Supreme Court with this?
The Supreme Court does not rule over. The Supreme Court writes our laws. I mean, come on, Dave, you know better than that.
What we're talking about doesn't have anything to do with our Supreme Court. This has to go back to the Crown. This has to go across the pond. This is the contract.
Why does the Crown have any say-so, Dave? Why? They don't have no say-so in our affairs.
The hell they don't.
Yeah, let me say it like this one more time. Let me say it like this. We can go to the Crown and say your great grandfather had an agreement with my great grandfather. That's the connection, Joe.
Bound to a treaty.
And he's bound to that treaty.
The only agreement was we won.
No, that treaty was
we won the war. The Revolutionary War. We won.
No.
Our independence.
That's not what the treaty was about. The treaty granted the rights, the privileges, the immunities, the sovereignty.
That's not what the Treaty of Paris was about, Mike. That's not what the Treaty of Paris was about. Okay?
Grant?
It established the territorial boundaries, Mike, fishing rights, restoration of property to the people okay? That means the loyalists who supported Britain during that time, Mike.
Right, to the people. And when you're talking, you see, again, see, I muted you again because you did it again. When you hear a word that you don't like, you even said it, you go, to the people, yes, that's right, to the people that fought against them.
Interrupt me halfway through making my point.
No, because you did the same thing last week, Joe, on the word posterity, when you skimmed over the initial foremost definition and just like let it kind of slobber over your lips and deliberately didn't say the words.
What was the Treaty of Paris for? I give you 4 specific points. Restoration of property, right?
Wait. So now you're doing that thing. Now you're doing that thing again where you go to Wikipedia and let me give you the 4 topics. That doesn't hold a lot of weight with me, but go ahead.
That's right. Restoration of property back to the people who originally had it before the Crown, because there was people on this soil 200 years before the Revolutionary War even started. And it was 100 years before the war that the Crown came and, took the land from the Dutch and took the land from the colonists that were here. So, yeah, they reconveyed the property back to the people because it was sovereign Crown lands, during that time frame.
And that goes to MJ's point that she made earlier in this conversation, that we were already here.
Yeah, and it had to do with the debts. The creditors from both right, nations were allowed to collect debts owed to them without interference, right? The prisoners of war, both sides agreed to release prisoners of war. Fishing rights, Americans were granted.
I'll tell you what, Joe. I'm going to tell you what. For the benefit of Grant, and I apologize, Grant. Joe, you're nothing but trying to argue against us. If you don't agree, no problem.
I'm talking about the Treaty of Paris.
No problem, Joe.
How am I arguing?
If you're only coming on here like Adam did because you guys don't agree, and I'm going to ask you right now, don't say a word for a second and don't unmute, okay? I'm going to make a point. All right? If you and Adam, who clearly are not comprehending, are being oppositional, and you're only going to come on here to try to argue against what we're doing, I'll not just mute you. I'll just delete you from the broadcast, and you don't need to come on again.
Okay,
otherwise,
so
you're welcome to be on here.
we're not allowed to make comments that disagree with you at all, right? That's what you're saying? Wow, sounds like the King of England here.
No, that's the point. Is we're having conversation, but is all
no,
you
we're not, Mike. They're one-sided
so
conversations. They're one-sided. That's what you just said.
There's no need to have you on anymore because you don't
That's
even
what
acknowledge. You don't even acknowledge the word. You don't even acknowledge the definition of posterity.
I have to agree with you.
You're rejecting. You're rejecting the word.
I have to agree with
posterity as it's defined by the Supreme Court, by the Black's Law Dictionary, by the Bible.
Can't say anything contrary.
And therefore, you're clearly just wanting to be argumentative, Joe.
That's not the righteous army that you started, Mike. You totally flipped the script, and that's what I meant by what you're doing. You're going off the rails here. This is not what you were about years ago, Mike.
No, this is actually exactly the same thing, only on steroids, on a much higher and more righteous level.
Well, you don't see it now, right now. Maybe you will in the future.
Okay, so you don't see it.
Black's Law Dictionary, cognate definition. Number one, of people sharing descent from a common ancestor from the same bloodline or family. Two, of a statute or other legal instrument traceable with another to an antecedent document. Direct lineage.
Thank you, Tave. So
Well,
I want to
It's
say
amazing
this.
how he can finish, but I can't.
Yeah, because he says something intelligent
No, because
reading
he's
off of
agreeing with you.
documents, and you just want to
Legal,
keep arguing.
legal document. You said it.
Joe,
Joe, I'm
hold on
coming.
a second.
Arm wrestle,
on,
Joe.
Joe.
Arm wrestle, Joe. You better watch it. Hush up.
Right.
Settle down.
Joe, hold on a second. Joe. It's the point is that there's always going to look, on the one hand, I appreciate and think this is significant. I think it's important for people like you and Adam to come on and be argumentative and to deny and definitions and try to create, because that conversation needs to be heard. It does, because you know what? There's going to be people out there who are purposefully opposed
It
to the reality.
escalated, Mike, your
Like I said,
argument.
like
It
I said, they're
escalated because
trying. Like I said, see, like I said, there's an effort being put forth right now to keep the posterity from knowing who they are. So there's going to be all kinds of people opposed to us purposefully. And if you want to join them, you're welcome to do that. But
I'm
there's a whole
not
bunch of
joining
us that are going to
anybody,
be
Mike.
joining forces by way of law and peace under God Almighty, because we're going to take back what's rightfully ours and do the right thing with it. So for the others, you should be rooting for us.
What's the
Like
right thing,
Tay.
Mike?
The right thing is the posterity, who are the owners of this land, getting together, organizing, and doing something about the corrupt government that has taken over the Republic of the United States of
And
America,
replace
because they're
it.
the only ones that can lawfully do
Replace
it.
it with what?
Because they're the only ones that
Another
have
dictatorship?
standing. They're the only ones that have standing to be able to do it. And the fact that they're the only ones that have standing to be able to do it is all the reason in the world for you and Adam and all the other naysayers to be supporting our effort.
Yes. Those that don't, we have to go along.
You don't have to.
Yeah, you don't have to go along, Joe. I just
That-
told you,
that's
if
what
you
he
want to be
just said.
oppositional, there's going to be plenty of people that are going to be opposed to us, and they're more than welcome to be opposed to us. And
What
if you want to
about
join that, if you want to join
what
that
about the people
community, Joe, please feel free.
What about-
You and Adam can go
what
join
about-
that community of naysayers
about
all day long. That's fine.
What about posterity? If I'm posterity and I go against you, what's that mean?
Well, that's
Why
a
would
We answer
comment.
such elementary
I
questions.
know that's
Well,
like a ridiculous
why
question.
is it?
Even to say that, look, Joe, it's like you want to just keep an
So
argument
wait a
going.
second. I have a legitimate question.
That's not a
and you're
legitimate question.
criticizing me. You see,
That's
you're
not
doing
a
the same
legitimate
shit.
question.
Yes,
I
it
just
is.
answered it. No, Joe,
if
I already answered it. I've already said there's going to be plenty of people, and I clearly indicated earlier in this broadcast that you yourself have claimed to be posterity, and you're going opposed to it. So there's going to be plenty of people that want to go opposed to it. If there's posterity that want to go opposed to it, I don't even know if you're really posterity, Joe, to be honest with you.
I don't know.
You might not be. You could
I
be
don't
just
know
an
if you really-
infiltrator trying to hijack the conversation, because we know that
I
kind of
don't know
thing
what
goes on
you're-
all the time.
I don't know
So,
if
and if
you
you
really
keep
go.
doing it, Joe, if you do keep doing it, I will ban you from coming into these meetings. I've made it clear. I'm bending over backwards for somebody like you to be on here. So, like I said,
Yeah,
if you
so
want
you-
to not make your little snickery,
make a point.
jokes and laughing in the background when Tave's trying to read a definition, or having Adam come on where you're trying to change definitions, or you're not reading definitions thoroughly because you're trying to make some case on here that's bogus, I'm not going to permit it. It's just that simple. Now, Tave, you have your hands raised. Do you have more to say, Tave? Go ahead, Tave. All right, Tave lowered his hands. Does anybody else have anything to say? Otherwise, I'm going to end the meeting. Grant, any last words, brother?
No, I just, the Treaty of Paris is what gave the status of sovereignty to the people, and it gave us proprietary ownership to the land. And he was talking about that third third thing in the statutory law, you know, that to me that fits the Treaty of Paris. Exactly.
Right. So a big part of this is for people to educate themselves, to go read the Treaty of Paris, to read the Constitution, to read the preamble, to read the law dictionary. I've been at Grant's table, and he's got several law dictionaries with all the colored things on hundreds of pages and highlighted through. He's gone through that dictionary and through all the other
What
books
does
he's
that
got
have to do with the conversation?
as strongly as any preacher's gone through the Bible and highlighted it. And I'm sure he's done that too. He's got a ton of information and documents that have Supreme Court rulings and Supreme Court findings and Supreme Court favorings that are all consistent with one another, that are consistent with the obvious reality and definition of what posterity and an heir is, which my son alluded to, Tave alluded to, I've alluded to, Grant has alluded to, MJ has alluded to. So there's not much more we can do for you, Joe, or Adam, or anyone else who just simply wants to be oppositional to it. And with that, Alex has her hand raised. So Alex, with your hand raised, go ahead, Alex. Go ahead, Alex. And then MJ. Go ahead, Alex. Alex? All right, go ahead, MJ, and then maybe Alex will.
Yeah, sorry, I had myself
Go
muted.
ahead, Alex.
Okay.
Yeah, Grant, if you could hold just for 2 more minutes, and let's hear what Alex and MJ have to say. Go ahead,
just
Alex.
very quick. I think I understood Grant. That he said he uses Black's Law 9th, and if that is so, and even if it's not so, I'm wondering. So, because my thinking is to understand what the writers wrote. I would have to find the definitions as close to the time that they wrote it. So what if I'm trying to determine the definitions, I'm trying to go to a dictionary that would be as close as I can get to the time. So that would be, I guess, around 1770 or 1800 or whatever. I heard Josh saying that Bouvier's 1856 is what the SCOTUS uses, but is there any disadvantage with, or anything that wouldn't make sense to actually try to find a dictionary as close to the time of whatever you're looking at?
I got the answer for you.
Hold on, Tave. Hold, please, because we have hands raised.
Well,
Yeah.
posterity
And
came back.
Grant was going to respond. Go ahead, Grant.
Well, there's Black's Law first, second, and you know, all the way up to the 10th.
Right.
And each time they wrote a new one, there was changes in the law. And that's why they published those books, to give the public notice of the changes of the law and the definitions. So the one I've got some older ones, and I've even went back and read, Black's Law 2nd edition. But I've got the 10th, and all I can say is that once you figure it out, and you go through there and you read the words and the definitions, it all became perfectly clear.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
would just add,
regardless of
hold on, Alex. I just want to add to his point. You know, when you say go back, and Grant already alluded to it, common law. Okay, so the understanding of posterity and common law goes way back, and it's bloodline. Go
I
ahead.
wasn't even referring to the discussion at all. I was just, when I heard dictionary, I remembered I wanted to ask that, because I think I remembered Grant saying he uses Black's Law 9th, and I understand it in connection with like new, whatever law is actually enacted, but when we go to whatever the founders wrote, like in general, or when the Declaration of Independence was written, then why wouldn't we go to a dictionary as close to the time that we can get?
Yeah, well, let me answer that also, because I believe that's what Joe did. If you listen to our last discussion, Joe tried to do that by asserting he had a dictionary from the 1700s, and you can hear in the video he very slyly and purposefully kind of sloughed over the first definition, which was bloodline posterity. He kind of slurred over that where you couldn't hear the first part of it. But then, you know, as dictionaries will have a second interpretation and a third, and then it gets into ethereal possibilities of use and things. Next thing you know, we're talking about Shakespeare, you know, and his writings. So, you know, There's always going to be adversaries that are going to try to put a twist on things, especially when it's not to their advantage.
That's completely beside the point I was making. Like,
Well, what's the point
I'm
you're
just
making?
talking generally.
Weren't you just saying wouldn't it make sense to go back and get a dictionary that's in the times of the writers? Isn't that the point you just made?
Mike, you just
Yeah, but regardless of what it refers to, like if we're looking at the Constitution, or if, let's say we're looking
Right.
at a
So
certain amendment which is enacted in the 1800s, so when we
right,
use, yeah.
right. So I just gave you an example of that. I just gave you an example of how Joe endeavored to do that, claiming it was an older dictionary, and tried to put that twist on it based on it being an older dictionary. That's the point. Sure, we can go back and look at old words, but ultimately, if we go back to common law, that's ultimately what we're all looking at here. And I see that MJ's hands raised. So MJ, go ahead, MJ.
cognate goes back to 1655 in Black's Law Dictionary that I have here, and it's the 12th edition. It says right as soon as I looked up cognate, in parentheses, it says 1655. That's how far it went back to that word.
Thank you, Tave. Go ahead, MJ.
Thank you. I appreciate all this conversation. I just wanted to make a point on the chat. I have put a link there. This is a link to a 1840 book, and then I put a couple pages from this book. The first page shows that there was a population of about 13 million, and the second page shows the denominations, and it shows that the Baptists were 4,300,000, the Methodists were 3 million, and the Presbyterians were 2,475,000. So of the 13 million, about over 10 million of them were those three Protestant denominations. And then the below there is mine, the Dutch Reformed, and then all those pretty much are all Protestants. There were 15,000 Jews and 12,000 Mormons and 800,000 Catholics. So less than 1 million were those three. Everyone else was protesters.
Right,
and that was that. And I have a copy, two copies of that book, and that was in 1840.
And that goes back to the real crux and basis of our position, is that we're talking about a godly people. We're talking about God's people, and that is the posterity.
Yes. And then the second thing I posted there was, I don't know, Grant, if you have heard of the Rules Enabling Act of 1934.
I think I have that. That was relating back to the switch in time.
That was when the Congress gave the Supreme Court the right to make laws. And so that's why in 1938, they came out with the civil code. And then in I think it was 1954, they came out with the commercial.
And I would just add to that was in the federal territorial plane. So again, they were giving them the right in that territorial plane.
But they couldn't do that because the Constitution forbid them to do that.
MJ, this is significant. This is where, again, I think you could be steered in even a more direct path, as right as you are on so much. This is where, let me make the example, like I've said with Joe and the Republic. I always thought from the beginning too, they went and noticed all the governors to step down, but they had no authority or right to do that because those governors were working in the federal territorial plane. And MJ, as brilliant as you are, and I'm so thankful unto God for you and your presence, because you're a brilliant woman. And I want you to know that there's a slight tweak on perspectives of things that I don't know if you get it yet or not, but when you do, you're going to be a super bomb, because Grant can explain it well, but it really comes down to, as Grant often says, thinking abstractly, that there's two planes of jurisdiction. This is where it comes to the issues of law and jurisdiction. And the courts have ruled on this. There's a federal territorial plane where that's what he was talking about with the switching times. They literally, when they infiltrated and hijacked, it was all relative to all the Banker Act and all that crap where they infiltrated and hijacked. They literally created this new, under FDR, the New Deal. We're gonna create the illusion of reality. Let me let Grant explain this because it's significant. Go ahead, Grant.
Well, the direct quote was, we the people granted Congress plenary powers over the 10-mile square in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. And there's another section in there where, you know, they have exclusive jurisdiction in the federal territorial plane, and that's what we call our system of federalism. Congress has its sovereign authority in the 10-mile square within that federal territorial plane of jurisdiction. The other jurisdiction is within the several states of the Union. Now, what Roosevelt did, where he said in 1935 to a speech of Congress, he said, "Our path to recovery is a narrowly conceived effort to exchange the appearance of reality for reality itself."
And in 1937, Justice Roberts halted that switching.
Joe, don't interrupt like that. Please raise your hand. Continue, Grant.
So, in my opinion, the appearance of reality is a lie, and reality is the truth. So they took that section in the Constitution, they simply set aside the Republic, and they opened and recreated a new government in the federal territorial plane, which is essentially Title I through Title 52 or whatever it is today. That's the United States Code, and that code is only applicable in the United States. It's not applicable in the several states of the Union. Now, to take it even further, in Title 28, they created the several states of the United States. Now, those states are a creation of Congress. They are not a creation of we the people. And those states that Congress created never joined the Union pursuant to Article 4, Section 4. They can't, legally. But those states only exist in the federal territorial plane.
Correct.
And every day, and they had to give you remedy, and your remedy is also in Title 28. Your signature remedy is at 28 USC 1746-1, which is the Republic, as opposed to 28 USC 1746-2, which is within the United States. And the Supreme Court case that covers, they clearly called it the planes of jurisdiction, is Ponzi versus Fessenden.
Yeah, and I just want to elaborate a couple thoughts on what Grant just said there. Thank you, Grant. Because I like putting things in a way of just, making it, elementary, where just the average person can kind of grasp it. Clearly, there was a people that founded this nation, a godly people for a godly nation. They established it. They had their common law, they had their republic, they had their constitution, they had their separation from the government that they gave jurisdiction over in that 10-mile square, and they had their contract. We are sovereigns. We give you these limited powers, and that's it. But clearly the enemy wanted to infiltrate, wanted to hijack, wanted to take over, and they did that through the Banking Act. They did that through again, Grant just referenced the FDR, the New Deal, the exchange the appearance of reality for reality itself, and did these congressional acts where they could now create this federal territorial plane. Well, when all this was going on, the Supreme Court justices, the further back you go, the closer they were to the Republic, and they could see what was going on. So they literally had to be very clever, right, on how they were going to go about, because I think it's, Grant didn't mention it, but it's significant that they were going to pack the court, right? We've heard that in recent days, right? That if they couldn't get done what they want, they're going to pack the court, right? To try to get the court to do something for them. Well, they were doing that then, and the Supreme Court justices didn't want the court to be packed. They wanted to preserve, the integrity of the court. So they were very clever on how they worded things, essentially trying to facilitate both ends. Hey, over here in the Republic, if you're here still, you have your 1746-1 remedy.
Where does it say that, Mike?
But as for all, it says it in 28 USC 1746.
Because
compare the two. You asked me a question, I'm answering it. So don't say no more. All right. That's where it's at, and I'll give you more. Just hold your horses, okay? You asked me a question. Where's that at? All right. That's where they gave obviously the mere fact that they even give such a remedy clearly demonstrates that there's two jurisdictions. If you're familiar with all the switching times cases, which Grant is, they clearly make it clear. They talk about time, place, plane, and Grant, let me let you elaborate on that, because there's clearly, they make it clear in order to accommodate and facilitate these two realms, this fact that there's the republic that was founded by these people for themselves and their blood posterity, as is in contract. And then there's this other territorial plane where they have their laws, where, like you said, they even made it where the Supreme Court can create laws. That was all done in their plane, not in the republic. And so we can call it fraudulent. But, and I'll let Grant elaborate on that. Is it fraudulent, or do they have the right over there? Over there, they have the right to do.
For better or for worse, we the people gave them the power to do it. In the federal territorial plane, Congress is the sovereign, just like Barack Obama told those people.
Right. Now, let me interject on that.
Because
of that reality, this is where, again, the courts were trying to preserve the integrity of the republic and the people in it and the posterity and who was. Because you can't take their rights away from them. Tave alluded to it. You got a contract that goes. This is consistent with the point we're always making about we can go over to the king and say, hey, my great grandfather has an agreement with your great grandfather. Are you going to honor it? There's treaty. They cannot break that law. They cannot break that treaty. Grant has given other examples where the Supreme Court has ruled you cannot, bring common law into the federal territorial plane, but you cannot deny the people common law either. So there's clearly
that was the last switch in time case, Erie Railroad versus Tompkins.
So there's clearly different planes of jurisdiction. You're either over there or you're over here. And if you're over here, guess what? Over here, the posterity have the power and the authority and the rule of their nation that Joe and Adam don't like to hear, because it sounds like they're going to be subject to some new kingship, which is ridiculous. How they're getting that, I don't know. It's just the fact that when you're over here, you are a sovereign. When you're over here, you're a sovereign. When you're over there, you are a subject to that federal territorial plane. Alex raised her hand, but go ahead, Grant, and then yield to Alex.
I'm not done yet either, so when you can come back to me, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, come back to MJ when you're done, Grant, and then Alex.
Okay, I'll just say that, a U.S. citizen can control the condition precedent to the contract by using the remedy at 1746(1), and therefore the laws of the Republic would apply to that contract. Or if you don't, it's going to be assumed that you agreed to contract within this new federal territorial plane, which has its own laws and which governs the contract. But even if you are a U.S. citizen and you do use your remedy and you pull yourself back over into the Republic, that doesn't change your status.
Clarify.
You're still a U.S. citizen. So that would mean that the legal relations of that U.S. citizen in relation to the Republic had a viewpoint when they went to the Supreme Court. Go read the slaughterhouse cases. And there was a difference view between the people as the sovereign citizens of the several states in legal relations to the United States and the several states of the Union. Because it's your status and the jurisdiction, and your status reflects your capacity in law. And the fourth one, the title, who owns who and who owns what. Those are the four elements that establish legal relations between the parties pursuant to the contract that you're operating under, which our contract is the Constitution for the United States of America. And if you control the condition precedent, the Constitution, the federal Constitution that applies in the federal territorial plane, which they adopted for their new appearance of reality, it has nothing to do over here on the other side. They're night and day. They're two different worlds.
Go ahead, MJ.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Actually, that one that I have, the Rules Enabling Act, just confirms what you were talking about, Roosevelt. It's where that's what's happened. They gave the Congress gave over to the court things they couldn't do. And so it's all fraud. And that's what you said. He was designing something, a different thing to look like reality, and it's not. And then I do have
in my fraud over there.
Pardon?
It's not fraud over there because Congress has the right to do that. If they tried to do that in the Republic, then it would be unconstitutional and fraudulent.
Correct, but they went fraudulent by doing all the stuff they did.
Yes, they did.
1871, it's all fraud.
No, I would disagree that we, the people, granted them complete authority, plenary powers in the District of Columbia and the territories. They can do what Congress can do, whatever it wants to over there.
How
Right
can
over
that be?
there, and that's where again it was. I believe if you read all of the switching times cases, you can see how they were trying to facilitate those two realities. But understanding, MJ, the over there, like you said, we did give the government over there, right, their own sovereign authority, the Congress, right? Yes, we can argue. I think where MJ's coming from, Grant, I'm sure you understand, is they took it too far. They did things we didn't expect them to do. This is where, again, it comes back to my position that I hold, that
They did things we didn't
in as
expect
much
them to do.
raise your hand, Joe. Don't interrupt, please. In as much as because you make people lose a frame of thought when you do that. Please don't do that. In as much as, yeah, thanks, Joe. Yeah, see, sometimes you think it's the enemy.
Yeah, because I hear what you're saying, and that's exactly correct. And this is another reason why we have the duty.
Made me lose my thought.
We have the duty to move them out because they
Thank you.
are doing fraud. They're just totally illegitimate. They don't belong there. So
Thank you.
that's what as I understand it. And
You
then I
helped me
have
bring
also
my-
put I have this for you,
Oh,
Grant.
I'm sorry,
didn't know.
MJ, you had my thought come back. And let me interject it because you helped it come back. And as much as it indicates in the Declaration of Independence, right, or in the preamble, that we have I'm paraphrasing it, right, that we can undo that government, right, that we can dissolve that government.
Certainly
That's
can.
referencing we the people. That's referencing bloodline, because it's the people that established it in their blood who can dissolve, who can what's the words it uses, help me, to establish a new government. We can do something about it. Abolish. That's where I was. We can. Only can the posterity abolish that government.
Correct.
But hold on, there's some cool stuff here, because Grant will bring up some cool points here about, you know what? And this is where it's going to get touchy, MJ, because you and I probably agree, but yet I agree with Grant. On the one hand, we'd like to get rid of all the riffraff and get rid of their system out of our nation, right? But Grant might make some good points about, hey, let them come over here. Let them clean our streets. Let them, we own the land. It's our property. Let them have their workers come over here and do all the work that they're doing. I'll let Grant elaborate that, and perhaps, Grant, to make your point. But there's a fine line between that reality and as you understand, Grant, MJ might take a position, and I probably would agree with her. If we the people, meaning the posterity, are the ones who have the lawful authority to abolish that government, do we want to abolish that government, Grant? Elaborate.
Well, I would say, do we the people have any money to operate our government? And then the question would be, is there any money in Fort Knox? If there is, then the next question would become, if there is any gold in Fort Knox, who's the owner of it?
Yeah.
Is it the people, or is it the federal territorial government? Because I believe that gold was put in there when we had a republic, wasn't it?
Right.
But I mean, it's going to take, I don't know if you can get enough people together that could do that.
Right.
That has the will and propensity to reestablish the government and make it functional. Because it takes money. It's going to take effort.
Well, may I?
Don't they use
May I? the government is really the 3,142 counties. That's where government happens. And it's a governance. It's not government.
But
Because the
hold on,
government,
MJ.
may
I'm
I
sorry for
finish?
interjecting. So I just need to interject a point. You need to understand when you say the counties, I'm sorry, MJ, but this is important. Those counties are also in the federal territorial plain.
The republic's been abandoned. There's nobody there.
Do they use the Vatican?
This is where the problem lies, MJ. And this is why I was trying to tell you earlier. Once you grasp this reality of the different planes of jurisdiction, that federal territorial plane is a corporation. The states are corporations. The counties are corporations. They are all in that federal territorial plane. The republic is uninhabited.
Right,
And this
but the
goes to the whole
people
point
are
of
not. The
Right, but
people, a government, they're not. They're dead. They're not
Right.
people.
Right, but the posterity, that's why I'm saying only the posterity can re-inhabit the seats of the republic.
And that's what we are. And that's what we should be doing.
Right, which
We
goes
should be
back to the
putting
whole
our
argument.
counties together, setting up our grand juries, setting up our militias. We are the people. If we are not active in putting this together, then it's not going to happen.
But this is where the problem lies with the republic, MJ, is because the republic, as we both agreed earlier, we both favor the notion that they are a controlled opposition, and we've
No, I'm
established.
not part of that. They're not what we the people are doing as
I
the
know, but
republic.
that's what I'm saying. But to the extent that the republic needs to be re-inhabited and can only be re-inhabited by the posterity, this is where we're at. This is the crossroads.
Right,
we're
and
at.
that's what we have, putting the counties together, our posterity. That's what's putting the counties back together, our posterity.
Well,
And that's what
you're
we're
right.
putting in our documents, that you have to be bloodline posterity to be on the county.
So, what are your thoughts on that, Grant? Of that process? What's your knowledge or insights on that issue that MJ said?
Well, yeah, the people can re-inhabit the
Yes.
republic, but it's
Yes,
going to
we
take
can.
enough of them. It's going to take enough of them to come
Mhm.
back and have the knowledge
Yep.
to conduct themselves in a manner to re-inhabit the republic and have the wisdom and the knowledge to run that government.
Right, because the government is on the counties. This tiny little Confederate that is blown up into just an unbelievable mess that is totally foreign, that they don't need to even be here. The only thing they're supposed to be two things: guide the commerce between states and keep our borders safe. That's it.
We know
And
that.
they're inside their own little group. The three of them, the three, Article 1, 2, and 3 are inside their own little group.
Right, but remember that point we made earlier, MJ, about the fact that there's an attempt right now by that federal territorial plane to create what they're going to call the republic?
Oh, correct. And that's why we better get our act together.
That's right. And how are we going to do that?
I'm working on it right now.
That's what we're all trying to do here,
That's
Joe.
what I'm working with.
And I
And
see
we
your
have
hands
broke
raised,
away.
Joe.
We have broke away from the republic. We broke away from Geiger. There's a group of us who realize that they and Carpenter and those guys are not doing what they're supposed to.
Right. Nice to see you, Tave. Hold on. So, MJ, when you're ready, you can yield over to Alex, and then Alex.
Okay, I just wanted to make another thing. I did put in Grant Article 6. This is just what I've noticed there. It at the very beginning of it, it says, that under the United States, under this Constitution, as under the Confederation. So it does talk about the Confederation in the Constitution. And then I say, we should set up our grand jury option. And I think then, yeah, that's about it. I just had that book. Oh, and also the 17th Amendment, 1913, that's a violation as well, because the people are not supposed to be voting. What we're doing here is totally wrong.
Right.
This is not how this is done. It all has to be redone. We're going to have to re-educate people. This is not how this teeny little Confederate is put together. People do not vote.
But that 17th Amendment probably was referring to the newly created U.S. citizens.
Correct. But that's all. That's why they were able to do all that.
This and I've got to go.
Yeah.
Go read. There's the 14th Amendment. Everybody talks about it. So there's section 1, but go read the second section and look at what they refer to as the male inhabitants 21 years of age and older and U.S. citizens. They made the distinction right there because, see, at that time, women couldn't vote. that right there, read it and ponder it and just consider what that's been
Women,
said.
we didn't vote, we elected. Women did elect. Women could elect. We didn't have parties. Women could elect. We were running a republic, and that's what we want to go back to, our republic. And we don't want to do anything with their stuff at all.
Women could not vote at that time.
Maybe under that, but in the republic, if the republic, the women have
I'm saying
property
we were in
owners,
the Republic.
property
When the
owners.
14th Amendment was created, we were in the Republic.
Well, we have two different views, and
that
that's okay.
There are electors and there are voters.
Correct. And we are operating in the republic. Now, they have usurped it, but God has not. God has not. This is his third republic. The first was in the garden. The second one was the children of Israel in the desert. This is his third republic, and he hasn't gotten rid of it. We are still his children and still to be stewards. And we've got to figure this out. We have got to do our duty and get them out. I yield.
I agree. But if you go look at who votes in the federal territorial plain today, the voters are restricted entirely to U.S. citizens. The citizens of the several states of the Union are not allowed to vote over there, nor do I want to vote over there. And
yes, I do not vote. I do not vote in the corporation either.
Right. So if you change your status and you are one of the posterity and you exercise your birthright and you come back into your status as a state citizen, then you couldn't vote in the territorial plain because it has nothing to. They abandoned our government. That government has nothing to do with our government.
Right, exactly. And that's why they need to go, because they are messing. There's nothing wrong with this Confederate. There's nothing wrong with the Constitution. What the contract. The issue is we have Brits in here that don't belong here. We have Tories that need to go home. That's the deal. And they provide remedy, and I use their remedy on my vehicle, on my conveyance. I have Z plates on my vehicle, on my conveyance, because Jefferson County, Colorado respects that. And actually, the motor vehicle is supposed to be manufacturing your Z plates because they got to get remedy. The Z regulation is simply a banking regulation, and they provide remedy. If you're not in commerce, you can get a Z plate, and that's what I've been operating on since 2021 is my Z plates. I gave my 3 notices, told them to give me my MSO, and otherwise it's going to be my private conveyance. And we just need to work in the system that is.
All over the place.
Pardon?
There's remedy in lots of
yes,
places if you know where
everywhere.
It's at.
Yep. We just need to go for it.
That's right.
Alex?
Yes, I wanted to know if I don't know if it's too late to ask, but concerning time, plane, space, and place, the only of the 4 that I have an understanding of is plane. And I would love to know what is time, space, and place. Grant.
Okay, I think it's in Title 16 where they created time. Because once they created this new plane of reality, the appearance of reality, the first thing that had to be done was time. And then there's the time and there's the space, because above us is space. It's 3-dimensional.
Yeah.
So there's time, and then there's space, and then there's the place, which, like the several states of the Union, have geographical boundaries. That's a place. And then there's the plane of jurisdiction. And what they essentially did is they created the federal government, when they did their switch, they created a plane of jurisdiction over the several states of the Union in Title 28. And every time that you give them an unrestricted signature, you've just interplaned yourself into that jurisdiction.
Yeah, that I understand. But can you make an example? What would you? So the plane, you declare your plane with by choosing between section 1 or 2 of 1746. I understand that.
Yes.
How do you create the time, the space, and the place? How do you elect that?
Well, what was the time that existed before they created that reality? I don't know. Maybe they used Greenwich time, Greenwich Mean Time. I don't know. But, there was the time that we had in the Republic. Now, they created a new time, United States Standard Time. And it says in that statute that you have a if you're over there, you have a duty to use that time.
So how would that matter in a court action? Like, why would you need to specify a time if you can just use a day?
I'm going to have to go, but I would suggest you go to Rule 9. Go read Rule 9,
special pleadings. Okay, where would I have to go to learn about space and place?
Time and place. Time and place.
Okay, and space? What can I read to learn about this?
Well, that would be, you could probably go, there's laws probably governing space. You know, there's probably legal agreements between nation states as who owns the space above us, who's going to have control over it.
But if you're arguing from, you're on the land of, I don't know, Arkansas.
If you're on the land, you know, that's what those people are saying. You know, I'm a man on the land. Well, they really don't understand it. If you're a man on the land, if you give them an unrestricted signature in today's world, then you know you're not a man on the land.
Yeah, but that's the plane.
However, in my opinion, if you are a state citizen of one of the several states of the Union, and you control the condition precedent that you're here, then yes, you are one of the owners and you're on the land. And the law of the land is the common law.
So when you're referring to space in those four items, is that common law or law of equity? Is that what you're referring to?
No.
Okay.
You know, I'm just saying that when it comes to space, I don't know if any of those laws apply in the space above you. It would apply in the plane that occurs within that space.
Then how is space, under which conditions is space?
Because within three-dimensional space, they're legal planes of jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And the planes are clear in the United States of America. Those planes are clearly laid out and recognized in law by an act of Congress in Title 28. 1746-1 as opposed to 1746-2.
Yeah, that's why it's so easy to understand plane. I just don't understand the other, like.
Well, planes occur within space.
So, but when you name those four items, it sounds like they all have the same weight. So if plane contains space, then space doesn't have the same weight as plane.
Well, really, to me, what we're talking about, space is irrelevant except in the fact that the planes occur within space.
Okay.
Thinking, because you got to think abstractly with your mind.
Yeah.
In reality, we're all here under the laws of nature and nature's God. We're all here walking around on this planet under gravity and all the other laws that pertain to creation. But when you're talking about governments, you're talking about ideas of abstractions.
Yeah, I agree. So is it then the only relevant point to decide whether you want to stay in the federal territorial plane or in the republic if you can, and all the others are kind of contained within that election?
Well, I'm assuming, like, if you went over to Great Britain, you would be in another plane in space of jurisdiction.
Yeah, you would.
Let me add to that thought real quickly. Too bad Adam's not here to answer for it on his own. But, you know, kind of along the lines of Adam's, you know, position earlier, I'm kind of paraphrasing his words from last week. I'm not a 14th Amendment citizen. Nobody has authority over me. I'm a free man. I live free. I'm God. Nobody has authority over me. There's no government. No government has any authority over me. There's a significance to that kind of argument because I've mentioned it in some other discussions we've had. As long as you're in this world with governments made by men, you're going to be I would challenge anybody to walk around in their, Birkenstocks in their, backpack saying that they're not subject to any law. And I'm a free man, I'm a sovereign, and try to walk around the world and see that, you're not subject to the laws that govern that time, place, and space there. You know what I mean? You're going to find yourself in a conundrum in a variety of ways because you're not associated or identified, and you're going to be therefore like tossed in the wind, a leaf. You're going to be in a jail over there in Mexico for some reason, but then over here in the U.S. for another reason, and then in China maybe for another reason.
You'd be a man without a nation.
Right. And therefore you'd have nobody to defend you either. You'd have no representative. You'd be on your own, but also relative.
Vagabond and a fugitive.
A vagabond and a fugitive, my son said.
And that's exactly why our forefathers created the federal government.
Yeah, and you could elaborate on that, I think, because that goes to the crux.
They created a federal government to represent we the people in our several states, and gave them certain powers that we deemed that they would need when we have to deal with foreign states, or like the Commerce Clause, which dealt with the commerce between the states, because they didn't want all these states arguing about how trade was going to interact. So commerce was given exclusive to Congress to regulate between the states, so it wouldn't be unfair. That was their purpose to that.
Right.
So they created that government to operate for us in the community of nation states.
Right. And of course, the problem that gets confounded here is we keep going back and forth on this is the fact that government has become infiltrated, hijacked, corrupted. Just real quickly, Seth, I'd like to just invite you, Seth, to say a word, maybe anything, where you at, where you're located. On the one hand, I'm not concerned about you being an FBI or an informant or an agent. I don't really care. But maybe you want to give a little identity to since you've been hanging in here with us for the last couple of hours. Seth? I know I have a Seth on my phone, possibly on my mailing list, who might have got the invite. I'm just curious if that's you, Seth. We've talked on the phone before. Or are you another Seth? Or are you somebody who's not named Seth, who's just using the name Seth? Anything you want to say? Maybe hello? Where are you from? Where do you live? And if you don't want to say anything at all, I'm going to, pretty much at least let you know that we're certainly aware that you may be an informant, an agent, FBI, CIA, whatever. And everything we're doing here is completely peaceful, lawful, and righteous. And we're just not providing any attorney advice. We're not acting as attorneys. We're not acting as any sort of legal advice for anybody. We're just free thinking men and women who are sharing our comprehension of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, law, treaties.
You got nothing to worry about, Mike. You're posterity.
Again, Joe, please. So Seth, anything? No? Okay. Well, you're free to stay in because again, this is a public conversation. The only way you'll ever make it into any of our private meetings is
only if you agree with Mike.
Look on the website. Yeah, Joe has a tendency to be a smart ass. That's one of the things I like about him. It's that Connecticut tough guy personalities guy. He's kind of a smart ass sometimes. I kind of like it. It's a little endearing. But Seth, feel free. All the information is on our website about those who will find themselves in our private meetings, which we're entitled to have as a private member association, a private ministerial association that we are. So these are just our public conversations. So you're free to say anything or say nothing at all, but thanks for hanging in here with us. We're going to cut it short here because we all got to go. But Joe did have his hand raised. Just quickly, Joe, anything intelligent to say real quick?
Hey, good luck, and I'll keep trying to learn, and I'll try to agree with you next time.
You don't have to agree. Like you said, you were right on the first part. Learn. Keep learning, brother. Appreciate that. Appreciate you being here. And then MJ, your hand's still up. Anything more to say?
Mentioned to Alex, I use Bouvier's for stuff that was the Constitution. I mean, before it was that before 1871, and then Black's Laws after, and then the 1828 Noah Webster's Dictionary.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And which Black's Law do you use?
I don't I don't really pay much. I bought one. I can't even remember which version it is, but I just bought one and I use that when I'm using, depending on what I'm looking up. So, and I just
Okay.
wanted to remind us all that the government of the American nation is on the shoulders of the Lord Jesus Christ, and so we are simply doing governance as his subjects and as his children.
Right on.
I yield.
All right, Tave, what do you got, brother? Any final words there?
Everybody to look into the Laws of War manual. If with us being occupied by a belligerent, and it specifically states the occupying power in section 11-4 that in the occupied territory, it emphasizes that sovereignty does not transfer to that occupant, that the people, which we are, can take that back. That's in the new Laws of War manual, the updated version. And I wanted to let you guys were talking about space, plane, and time. I found that through trying to get my allodial title here at the house, that I came across some information that showed the federal jurisdiction in every state has a zip code. And that's how they determine when you're going to go to a court where you're going to appear at. And that space, therefore, not only, she knew what the plane was, but the space going up, like Grant was saying, falls into the FAA where you go, I think it's 175 feet or something. I can't remember exactly, above your home is that space that they're referring to, but it will be within your, or that specific zip code, how you can narrow it down. If you understand what I'm saying, I'm losing my voice. I've been yelling at my neighbor. He's going to get his ass kicked when I'm done. But these this belligerent occupation that we have going on not only takes precedence in that 10-mile square that we call Washington, but it also entitles the people in the Vatican City and London City. All three of them fall under the same immunity from everything. That's why nobody's ever held accountable, and that's where they hide.
On that note, Tave, I just want to piggyback on what you said there, because this is again, and this is what I want MJ to grasp too. Grant really has this down very common sense. It just makes perfect sense that federal territorial government, even though we don't like it, even though we call them corrupt and we call them belligerent, and they've taken over, they've essentially done it in a way where they can say, "Yep, you can leave us. You've got remedy. You can be free from us. You can be separate apart. You don't have to be subject to us." And yet they also still maintain their authority because, like Grant said, we gave it to them initially. It's a fine line. This is something we do need to address, Grant, that we need to kind of help get some clarity.
Has anyone ever done it, Mike?
We need to really try to get to a well, that's what we're trying to do, right, Joe? We're trying to find the answers to that.
Well, Mike, we know what going through the Righteous Army stuff, how difficult it is to do it.
Right. And that's why, again, I think the ultimate bottom line here is, this new truth, like I said, look, as Joe knows, yes, I was doing Righteous Army for 2 years without knowing any of this stuff. But now I'm all about this because it's the next level. It makes sense. It's clear to me. It's clear to my son. It's clear to Grant. It's clear to several others. It's clear to MJ. It's clear to others that aren't even here right now. So there's a truth here that's a higher truth. It's a higher revelation. It's truly the tip of the spear, above and beyond all the efforts I was putting forth with Righteous Army, which was me just saying, hey, man, Americans, man, where are we going to unite and organize? Where's the 300 that are going to stand up against these corrupt, so-called government that's taking away our rights and trying to force? But here we are. We're back to the point that will the government be able to mandate 14th Amendment citizens to wear a face diaper or to get an injection? Yeah, they've already done it. And what's interesting to me is that the biggest argument I saw during the pandemic was that if you were a federal employee, government mandates only apply to the government. Let me put it like that. That was the big takeaway I got during the pandemic when I first started pursuing where are my rights, is that a government mandate only applies to the government, i.e., and government employees. So if you are property and a franchise of the government, you are a government employee. You are property and ownership of the government. You are a subsidiary of that government. So therefore, they can mandate it upon you. Can they do it to a free and sovereign people? No. Can posterity absolutely, unequivocally claim to be a free and sovereign capital C citizen? Yes. If anybody else wants to go for it, go for it. But the ones that there's no argument to are those who have privity of blood. That's a fact. That's the position that we hold. And that's the reason, that it's contrary to this little frustration and argument that Adam was trying to make when he was on earlier, and Joe piggybacks with them, like we're trying to say we're the new kings. That's absurd. No, we're just saying that we are for certain by law and treaty entitled to our rights, privileges, and immunities.
But you don't think,
that's up to you, Joe, to figure out, isn't it? I know that as a bloodline posterity sovereign, I know that the posterity are. Let me put it to you like that. And I know that the law says a 14th Amendment citizen is not.
But I
Let
thought
me
the
put it to you
people
like
gave that away. That's what Grant said. I thought the people gave that away. That's what happened. That's why it was lost. That's
Nobody
what he said.
You want to clarify
We
that?
gave Congress the authority to do that. That's why it was lost.
All right, let Grant clarify it for you. Go ahead, Grant.
We gave Congress to operate within the federal territorial plane. They can do whatever they want to over there, but they can't do that in legal relations to the people in the several states of the Union. That's precluded by the 9th and the 10th Amendments.
All right, no comment. No comments
That's-
back on that. So why don't we end it there? I'm already going to turn this into a 2 or 3 part video, and God bless you, Grant, and thank you for being on as long as you were tonight with the several people that have joined. And I appreciate you making yourself available.
I'm going to run. Everybody have a good night.
You too, brother. God bless you.
Okay. Bye.
Yeah.
Good night to everybody. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and end this. I'm going to turn this into a 2 or 3 part, part 1, part 2, part 3, maybe an hour a piece on the videos when I upload it, so everybody knows. And it'll be on the website, at the bottom of the website. So thanks, Seth, for joining in. Thanks, Alex, for coming on, and MJ, great to see you. And Tave, Joe, appreciate you guys being here. Good night, everybody. God bless. See you next Tuesday night.